go. The Coalition, of course, talking about what to do on housing. That's a part of the issue, they say. Too much migration at one time. But also, they want to give Australians access to superannuation to help out the deposit. Joining the panel now, Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg, who's been driving this for quite a while. Thank you for your time. Just want to clarify on this, sort of the latest numbers you have. The first year, if you win government, how many people would qualify for this scheme, and what modelling have you done on how it would affect house prices?
Well, the overall position here is that we would reduce permanent migration, and we want to more finely calibrate the ratio between the amount of people that are coming into the country compared to the amount of houses that are being built. So if you look at the last year, you've seen 600,000 people come into the country and only 170,000 houses built. So making a bad situation much worse. So we're trying to reduce foreign demand for Australian housing here.
But on the super policy, the superannuation policy, accessing super, in that first year, how many Australians would be eligible to use that, and what would it do to house prices? What modelling have you done on that?
Yeah. So in terms of the number of people that will be able to use it, the average super balance for a 38-year-old is about $85,000, $90,000. So you would see a large chunk of those people, if they wanted to pull their super out and put it into a home deposit, that would go a long way to getting a deposit in a capital city like Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane. And in terms of the impact on pricing, the independent economists like Peter Chulip and Cameron Murray and co have all made the point that it would be minuscule in a $10 trillion housing market.
Well, perhaps. I mean, what you say there in terms of how many people, large chunk, doesn't sound too scientific to me. You're going to have figures on how many, and then what modelling. You have to do some modelling on house prices, even if you say it won't do much. Because remember, a lot of these people will probably be buying a similar value of house as well, so concentrating them on one sort of area.
Well, I mean, at the moment, a large group of millennials and Gen Zs are on a trajectory never to own a house. So we think that using people's own money to get into the housing market is a very important policy objective, which is why we've prioritised home ownership above other factors. And I'm referring to the modelling that's out there, the modelling that hasn't been commissioned by the super funds that have a vested interest to keep our money in a locked box. And the independent economists say that it would have a very marginal impact on house prices, but it would significantly help people who are battling to get a deposit together in the absence of having the benefit of the bank of mum and dad.
Andrew, can I ask you to clarify something the Shadow Treasurer told the Press Club last week? He said on this policy, Australians deserve the opportunity to use their super for every possible investment that's available. So if I'm looking at this policy and the coalition is elected, can I take my super out and put it into Bitcoin if I think that's an investment?
Well, at the moment, our policy is calibrated only for housing. So
he was wrong in the Press Club last week.
Well, the superannuation idea is very paternalistic, and it assumes that Australians cannot look after themselves. I've never agreed with that. The reality is that the key determinant for your success in retirement is not your superannuation balance, it is your home ownership status. So we are prioritising home ownership over superannuation because we think that's the best guarantee of a safe retirement.
Would you like to see, personally, I think I know the answer to this, compulsory super scrapped altogether? You don't believe in Paul Keating's idea?
Well, that's not our policy.
But what do you believe?
Well, I'm a member of the Shadow Ministry, so I am a supporter of our policy, and our policy is to allow Australians to take $50,000 of their own money for superannuation, and that's currently being looked at by a Senate inquiry which has recommended expanding that policy.
Right, and just to clarify, I wasn't quite sure I got an answer. Could you pull it out and get Bitcoin if you wanted?
That's not our policy, no.
Not your policy. Okay, so it'd have to go specifically into a house is the only way to do it, in your first house.
I mean, you can't live in a Bitcoin.
Well, I don't know.
But Angus Taylor said it was any possible investment, every possible investment. He didn't specify housing.
Well, we have a compulsory superannuation system at the moment. It hasn't been very successful. Most people are not being able to live in retirement off the pension. Most Australians will always be on the pension, even as we get into the back end of this century. And our policy at the moment is to open up super for housing. That's the current confines of the policy.
All right, Andrew Bragg, we'll leave it there. We're getting overlay of Bitcoin. Look, invest if you want, but don't consider it financial advice if you want a good retirement. When we come back, we'll talk to the Shadow Immigration Minister about